This KVK had some of the worst fighting I have ever seen in my entire Rise of Kingdoms career, and so I thought it was time to make a video walking through how to fight in Rise of Kingdoms, and more importantly, how not to fight in Rise of Kingdoms, because it's become increasingly problematic. Let's jump into it. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another Rise of Kingdoms gameplay episode from your very own Chappy Gaming. And today we are talking all about how to fight in Rise of Kingdoms, how not to fight in Rise of Kingdoms, things to keep in mind, etc., etc., etc. If you guys are new to the channel, I'm a sponsored Rise of Kingdoms content creator. I've been making Rise of Kingdoms videos for a very long time. And if you want to join the Chappy squad, be sure to hit that subscribe button right over there, bottom right-hand corner. Now, today's video is a little bit overdue. And what you're seeing above me is actually content from this KVK. I recorded it on my phone because I was so flabbergasted by what I was seeing. And we're going to break down, A, how to fight in Rise of Kingdoms, things you should do, things you should not do, what you should be doing depending upon your power level, because just so everyone knows, the power level you have in Rise of Kingdoms directly equates to how Rise of Kingdoms matchmaking works. And some things that you want to keep in mind when it comes to fighting as a kingdom, fighting within an alliance, fighting within a camp. So first off, when you are going through and you are preparing to fight in Rise of Kingdoms, there are a couple of things you absolutely have to do. So let's jump into game. In Rise of Kingdoms, with the new crystal technology, you need to, A, make sure that you have maxed all of your sizes of units, right? This means you can run 410,000 units per march. We'll talk about kind of what that looks like depending upon your power level, but generally, you want to be running all 410,000 units. These are the marches I'm running. Some of them are meta. I think they're pretty good. My equipment is middling, but these are the marches I'm running. But I'm also 82 million power. When you are going into any zone fighting, Zone 5, Zone 7, Kingsland in particular, you want to be doing a couple things out the gate. First, advanced army expansions. You need to be using these because the whales are using these. And if you're not using them, you are at a severe disadvantage because the damage formula in Rise of Kingdoms puts you at a significant disadvantage if you have fewer units than the targets that you are attacking. So you have to use them. There are a couple different ways you can get these. You can get these through alliance mobilization as rewards. These are what I choose literally every time. And if you don't have them there and you're about to go into combat, you can also get them by going into the VIP shop, and they are down here at the bottom for 2,500 gems apiece. You need to buy them. The other thing that you have to be doing, popping the appropriate buffs. So there's a 24-hour enhanced defense buff, and there's a 24-hour enhanced attack buff. What I recommend, if you're a low spender, you probably want to go for defense, because if you get targeted, defense is going to make you a little tankier, especially if we're talking about being swarm-proof. If you're a mid spender and above, you probably want 24-hour enhanced attack because this is going to increase your damage output, which also scales with the unit capacity. If you're not doing this, you are hurting yourself and your kingdom. Just point blank. Another couple things that you probably want to make sure that you are doing is going through and setting up your commander tab. People forget about this all the time, but you should have your meta commanders set up within your commander tab because there are troop buffs in here. So do that. I always do. You should too. Really easy way to get started. You'd also go through and make sure that your armaments are in a decent spot, right? You want ideally all of the same buff for the unit type. You'll see here, I have one particular one that I'm missing here, gold gathering speed. Really, I should fix this, but because it's in this particular slot, I'm going to ultimately be swapping this armament out anyways. So go through, check that your equipment is probably in the right place. Make sure you have your presets all set up so that you can easily spam out your marches. Now, when we talk about presets, to do that, you go over here, you select your commanders, then you hit this little green button, and you can set things up over there. Most players probably already know this, so that's fine. But you do want to make sure that you're optimizing for march speed with this. A lot of people forget about this. But the way multi-select works is it actually cycles through this list. If you put your cavalry on top, you're sending them out first. which means they're going to be far ahead of the rest of your marches. Generally, you want to put your slower marches on top there. Quick tip. Now, we've gone through that. We've talked about how to prep for battle. Let's talk about what you should be doing and what you should not be doing, because this last KVK was painful. So here we are. We can see the combat that I had here. Now, what you'll notice is we didn't have any coherent ball. You have two groups of players. You have players up top and you have players on the right. Generally, you don't want that to happen. The way Rise of Kingdoms combat works is you typically have something called a murder ball, and that's where everyone groups up. R4 will put a marker for a murder ball. When they do that, you should send all 5 of your marches, if you have 5 marches, to that murder ball. If you are doing anything other than sending all 5 marches to that murder ball, you are hurting your kingdom and you are hurting yourself. This is especially important because if you look at this KVK, we have maybe 10 players online right now that are fighting, but we're not all grouped up in one cohesive area. And so what ends up happening is if people say, I'm not going to do it, you end up in a situation where you have 1 or 2 people in this murder ball that you are setting up to ultimately push into the enemies. But because there are only 2 people there, enemies can push in, kill that, and then you have no place to group up. And what happens is you end up with a bunch of cities there where people aren't aggregated and enemies are aggregated. And so this person sent out 5 marches, which was great. Money Mango, I did it too, and I was cheeseburgering here because I didn't have any alternative. But when you send out marches with this situation, you actually end up getting teamed up on and no one gets good trades. Now, here's the other thing. Trades are not everything. You do not win KVKs by getting good trades. You win KVKs by fighting as a team. As I said, this KVK was some of the worst fighting I've ever seen in my entire Rise of Kingdoms career. That's saying a lot. I've been playing for close to 6 years at this point. When there is a ball marker, you go to the ball marker. You don't go and do this, and I've heard this term before. You don't go monkey fight, where you go and you do your own thing, right? Lee is over here fighting up top. He should be over in a ball marker because you have Micro Rod and Lee, but they're not getting any of the buffs from each other's marches here. So you need to go have one cohesive ball. And candidly, the responsibility for setting up the ball is on R4. R4 in War Lead should have a ball marker. There should be a ball marker right over there on the right where that orange flag is. And then when you have a group of people together, typically 5 or more players, you will have a push marker. Push means push. 1079 did better at this than any other kingdom I've ever been in. When there's a push marker, everyone goes in the direction that you're supposed to be going. That is critical. If you ignore the push marker, what ends up happening is you guys will lose the fight, your ball will break up, and you can end up in this situation like you did at the beginning of the video here, where the enemies start coming and people just start retreating. That defeats the entire purpose of push. Push is to get everyone to a particular area and stop the enemies from getting there. You need to trust your R4. Even if they're not R4 from your kingdom, if they are the war lead for your coalition or for your camp, you need to trust them. If they put a push marker and it's at a destination that you can't get to, say, hey, we can't get there. But you cannot just start retreating as soon as the enemies start coming. The whole point of the ball and the pushing is to get you to a point where you can fight enemies in an ideal scenario where you are fighting over something that matters. Sometimes this is to swarm down a flag. Sometimes this is to defend a flag. Sometimes this is just to keep enemies from getting to a particular place. But if you ignore push and you ignore the ball markers, you end up fighting like this and getting absolutely smacked like we did here. You have to listen to the R4 if you're going to fight. Sometimes people use emotes and it says charge. Follow that. You need to actually push though. It does not matter if you trade positively or negatively. Candidly, and we'll start talking about what different power levels should be doing, the whales should be leading the charge. If you're a 75 million power player, you should not be leading the charge. The whales should be leading the charge and everyone should be following them. The reason for this is that whales typically have a ton more resources, a ton more speed ups, and better equipment and armaments, which means their trades, even if they're in the front, are probably going to be pretty good. And that's the whole idea behind that. But if you end up in a situation where you have 75 million power players that are leading your charge, you are not going to be set up in the best way possible, because those players are going to die fast, your murder ball is going to get a lot smaller, and you will not benefit from that. Now, all of this to say, R4s need to be setting markers for ball up. They need to be set a decent distance away from where enemy marches are so you can actually group up and then push forward together. You need to follow the ball marker and actually go to where you're supposed to go. If the enemies start coming, unless there is a retreat marker that is dropped, you do not run away. Now, in the event that you do run away, there are a couple things you need to keep in mind. If you look back at this footage here, you'll notice when I get into combat, I have these little rage markers here. When you are running away, you are not dealing damage. You want to be able to run away in a way where you are still dealing damage, because otherwise you end up in a situation where people just run full force back to their city or back to wherever they're running to, and you deal 0 damage and you just take a ton of severely wounded because your slower marches just get caught. What you want to do is actually something called kiting. Kiting is when you attack the enemies as you're running away. So you'll notice we start to move back here. I attack. Now we start to move back a little bit more. I attack. You start to move back a little bit more. This way you keep your rage cycle going, and you can deal damage and trigger your skill damage while you are retreating. This reduces the number of severely wounded you take. It also reduces the number of severely wounded that the rest of the people in your kingdom take. Because if everyone is kiting troops like this, you're popping off skill cycles as you're going, dealing more damage and mitigating a lot of the just completely unprotected skill damage that you are taking from enemies otherwise. You need to be retreating this way if and when you retreat. Generally, I say do not retreat unless there are markers that say so, especially when we're talking about zone fights. Because in Kingsland, if you start retreating, A, it takes a long time for your troops to get back to your city, but B, it also means that there are fewer marches on the field, which means your allies are going to take trades that are worse. So you want to have your marches probably sad facing unless you are very close to the combat. Now, let's talk about who should be doing what in each scenario, because I've seen this come up a lot, and I actually talked about in my most recent video how I'm approaching 85 million power, which I don't like. The way that I typically try to define the different power groups, especially with the new tech, is that if you are 85 million power and below, congrats, you're a field fighter. You're not tanking. You should not be tanking. You should certainly not be taking city swarms. You're not swarming structures much either, because you want to lose your power strategically in Kingsland or in Pass 7. You can successfully run 5 full marches of 410,000 units because you're using the troop boosts. And those are full T5 marches ideally. If you do the math with 410 5 T5 marches, that puts you at just about 80 million power. Give or take. Depends on your commanders and armaments and all that. But it's just about 80 million power. So that gives you enough troops to kill some, right? But also fight and run full marches, which are going to be important as you go through KVK, which you want to be able to do because that's going to be really, really important. Now, for these players, you are trying to reach 30 million kills by the end of KVK. If you get to do it earlier, great. You probably deserve to have slightly higher power, but you're able to run 5 marches. Most people that are between 75 million and 80 million probably only have 4, which is totally okay. But your goal is to reach 30 million by the end of KVK. You're not tanking. You are not the front of the murder ball. You are trying to play more strategically. You're also not really going to necessarily be running all cavalry, archers, or infantry. You may have a range march or 2. If you're above 85 million power, congrats, you're now the tanks. You have enough power and enough troops that you can be in the front, leading the fighting, and your equipment and armaments are S tier. So if we go and we actually look in game at my setup right now, you will see my equipment and armaments are not S tier. So if we go over here We go look at my breakdown. My equipment is S, my armaments are not. My troop count is also not, because I don't have that many troops. You should have S tier armaments if you're going to be above 85 million power. You just should. That doesn't mean that you have the best armaments that you possibly can, but you want to be contributing in a way that is most valuable to your kingdom. This means tanking. So when the murder ball does say push, you are pushing. You are front of the pack. You have the equipment, resources, and speed ups to be able to tank. Now, this is 85 to 100 million power. So obviously, it's a sliding scale. 95 and above, you are absolutely the tanks. You should be leading the fights no matter what. These players are also the players that are breaking 30 million kills every KVK. It's not a question. It is when, not if. Maybe it's in Kingsland. Maybe it's by pass 7. For some people, it's even in pass 5. But for these players, these are the main tanks, leads, people who need to be fighting the most. If you are above 85 million, 90 million power, and you are not getting 30 million kills, and you are not leading the charges, and you're playing defensively, you should not be at that power level, because you are hurting your kingdom by doing so. The exception here is rally and garrison leads, but again, those typically fall into this next bucket. If you are 100 million plus power, congrats. You are a Kraken/whale. You're probably maxing tech every KVK. If you're not maxing tech, you should be. You swarm every structure. When there's a structure or a flag that needs to be swarmed, you do it, because you have enough troops that you can kill over 2 million troops every KVK and still be fine. Especially with the way KVKs work now, where you actually get more troops back the higher the tier. You should be swarming everything if you're over 100 million power. I don't care if you're potentially losing the structure with the rally, swarm. Because you can take so many dead units that you will then get back. And because you're a Kraken or a whale, you will train up during KVK. You will train up during the difference. 1 million troops to train, not that big of a deal. So 100 million power, you're swarming everything. You lead the charges. Sometimes you're an R4 who's actually saying we should charge. Trades don't matter to you. You're 100 million power, trades should not matter to you. Now, if you're 100 million power, you're probably trading pretty positively anyways. I talked to Lambo, who is over 100 million power, and he says he doesn't care about trades, because when you're at this point, it matters more that you are winning the KVK than the trades that you have. And really, trades only matter for the free-to-play because they have low resources. But if you're 85 million power and above, trades should not matter. It's resources and speed ups that you're going through. That's the important part. If you're 100 million power, you've got plenty of resources and you have plenty of speed ups. And if you run out of resources, you will get more. I'm not worried about it. Now, you could be a rally and garrison lead if you're over 100 million power, because you have the best equipment and armaments in the game. At this point, you're min-maxing things. Like I was talking to Lambo, who was saying, hey, I need to try and get the maximum all damage bonus that I possibly can. He was trying to get 8% all damage bonus for his archer set. And he did, which is crazy. So that's who you are. If you're over 100 million power, that's what you're doing. You have S tier equipment. You have S tier armaments. You have all really good setup, refined equipment here. Maybe you even have a couple crit accessories. If you're over 100 million power, this is what you should look like. If you are over 100 million power and you don't look like this, you are failing your kingdom. And now some people in the comments are going to be like, Shappy, you're being really harsh. And it's like, no, I'm just tired of getting really bad matchmaking because people are not doing what they're supposed to be doing for their roles. And that is why you end up with these situations in these videos where everyone goes, run away, because there are no whales that are willing to tank. We had just as many people as they did here. Just as many marches. But we are running because no one was tanking. There were no markers. And we just ran away. And what happened is people's marches got caught. My march got caught. You actually see my marches start to get targeted as we move forward here. Red flashing lights. That's because my marches are getting targeted as we run away. I'm under 85 million power. I should not be tanking. So hopefully this is helpful and it breaks down what you should be doing to prepare for fighting. You should always be trying to fight on territory if you can. That's really important. Don't fight in enemy territory. Follow markers. Push when everyone says to push. Fight as a group. use murder balls the way they're supposed to be used. If you're a 100 million power whale, you probably shouldn't be using a ranged march. That defeats the purpose. You are way more valuable in the field leading the fights than just getting kill points. Hopefully this helps you guys out. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. My goal is to try and make it clear what everyone's responsibility should be doing, and hopefully never have a KVK like this again, because this absolutely sucked. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to drop a like on the video and hit that subscribe button right over there, bottom right-hand corner. Hit the bell so you get notified when new episodes come out. Thank you all. Chappy out.